Hello guys, this is Bubuii making my first video for Bubuii Poker. In this video I'll do a concept video. I will be trying to describe my approach and my play to counter a current style that people are playing really loose and aggressive. But I want to say this style is more for MTTSNGs like 180 man, 45 man, 18 man maybe, but it's not that good for MTTs. In MTTs I do play differently from this current strategy, but for like 180 man and 45 man I do use this kind of strategy. The reason is for 180 man and 45 man the field is smaller. That means we are closer to the money and we don't have to play that aggressive or that loose. So these PowerPoints only have like 3 slides, but I'll try to describe all the points that I sum up, and when I observe, when I play, like other people are making these kind of mistakes. So first is pick the right spot to shove or to call. About 2 years ago, people just shove blind versus blind with any 2 cards because it's really plus EV because people are not calling late light. But recently people are calling really light, and shoving blind versus blind with any 2 cards are not that profitable. First we want to look into the EV equation. So what are the factors in EV equations? First, the stack size, effective stack. Second, our hand equity against other opponents' hand equity. And third, folding equity, like how much fold equity we have, and also like how much pot pre-flop we have. So those are the 4 factors. A lot of times when people are playing 30 tables, 40 tables, they will just look whatever the stack they have, say like 10 big blinds, and they look at their cards, they look at their positions, and they just shove according to the cards, but they didn't look into a lot of other factors, such as first, how people are calling you. Like if they are calling 30%, how is it different 30% from the different composition of 30%? For example, let's pull out poker stuff. So if we know like we are shoving into a 30% color blind versus blind, this is the range poker stuff give 30%. But in reality, now people are calling this type of 30%. They are probably calling something like this. Take out checkmate and suited. Like this is, I'll take out 3s also. Yeah, this is also 30%, so it's kind of different from pre-select 30%. So we want to know like our hand equity against different type of calling range. And second, we want to know that how much, like the most important thing is how much fold equity we have. So if we are smaller stack and we are shoving into a huge stack, he's more willing to gamble, so our fold equity decreases. And same thing, if we're shoving to a smaller stack, our fold equity also decreases a lot, so our EV will change. Second is EV sensitivity. Okay, so there are hands that when we shove, we have to put in marginal errors pre-select range. For example, like if we think the guy is calling 30%, we want to give him like plus or minus 10% if he adjusts or he didn't adjust. So if we assume he's calling 30%, in reality he might be calling 20 to 40%. And how well our hand EV changes when he's calling 40% or when he's calling 20%. So for example, say if I shove 7-5 off 10 big blind, blind versus blind, if he's calling 30%, let's say like, okay, we have like plus 200 EV. Then if he's calling 40%, we are like minus 400 EV. We want to know like how much our EV decreases when he increases his calling range. Then something with calling EV, like we want to know like our calling EV when he adjusts to our range. So if we are assuming he's shoving 60%, if he's tightening up to 40%, how much will our EV change? And this is really important. There are spots that our hands are not that sensitive. Like we can just shove regardless, like what type of hand he's calling. So this is also very important, and we'll get to it later. EV in different spot. I think it's really important to have like very solid fundamental. Like for example, like if we have F5 off 10 big blinds, blind versus blind, there's 30% calling range. First, we want to know like what's the composition of the 30% calling range. Let's assume just this like normal 30%, like we just described in poker stuff like this. How does this EV compare to King 6 suited shove on cutoff with 10 big blinds with all 15% calling range behind us? Or how about this? Calling 10 big blinds with King off versus 50% shoving range. Like we want to have a very solid knowledge about like EV in different situations like this. And if we don't know like EV comparison of this kind of situation, and we just shove like blindly, then a lot of time we don't shove or call in the ideal spot. A lot of time we are shoving in plus EV spot, but those plus EV spot are not the best spot. People are thinking like, as long as it's plus EV, it's a good shove. But the thing is, there are different scenarios in plus EV, and we will get into it in later slides. Okay. Second point is the spot to pass, so I can pick better spot. So the main thing is, if we lose, we don't get to see the future hands. So for example, like blind versus blind. If I fold a blind versus blind in small blind, we have 9 hands to pick up a hand and to double up from there, or we can call a shove when we hit by the blind. So if we just shove and get called, even though it's plus EV, we don't get to see the future situations. But like what kind of spot we should be passing, it's really hard to describe because it's really depends on the reads on the tables, and we can get more into details. But the thing is, it's important to know that if the spot is too thin or too marginal, or it's too high variance, we can always pass and wait for a better spot. And this is especially important in MTTSNGs because people shove a lot. People shove very aggressive. There are a tons of spots we can just call and be more plus EV than shove to a very loose player who's calling really wide blind versus blind. And yeah, the third one is marginal errors of pre-select range. So this is really important because even though people use HUD a lot when they play, HUD doesn't show what kind of range people are really calling with or people are really shoving with. So for example, my steal percentage might be 30%, but against when I notice like big blind and small blinds are really tight, I am opening up to like 70%. And if I know they are really aggressive, they reshuffle a lot, I'm just gonna steal like 15%. So my range adjusts a lot to people's range. So we want to include those kind of marginal errors to when we shove. So when we see a big blind is calling like 30% blind versus blind shove, doesn't mean he's only calling 30%. Because if he knows you are shoving 100%, he might be widening up to like 40%, even 50%, something like that. So we want to know that if people's range are different from what we assume, how our EV gonna how is the EV gonna be changing? Alright, the second one is risks. A lot of times I see a lot of regulators just shoving like 15 big blinds, 16 big blinds. I think those are okay in MTTs, because in MTTs when you get to like 15 big blinds, all you want to do is to double up. No matter you win a flip or you backbeats other people, like all you want to do is just to double up to like 30 big blind range, so you can steal, you can re-steal, you can 3-bet, you can 2-bet or 3-bet or stuff like that. But if you only have like 15 big blinds, your options are really limited in MTTs. But in Silangos, everyone is kind of shallow, so there's really no point for you to get to like 30 big blinds. Yeah, you can abuse other people, but when people are so shallow, they're just gonna call really light regardless. So a lot of time I see a lot of high risk plays, especially at calling. Like when I shove like not me, like when I see a reg shove like whatever blind, and I see the other reg calling super light, and all they accomplish is to cost each other's EV, and other people just sit there and watch them kill each other and just move up to one place. So the higher the risk, the more certain the spot has to be. So first we want to know that calling is a guaranteed risk action. So when we call, we are guaranteed to risk our stack. But when we shove, we have like we even though like EV are the same, like okay, let's say two situations, calling and shoving, they all have the same EV, but when we call, we are definitely gonna risk our chips. But when we shove, there are times that people just fold because we're folding equity. So that means like when we call, even though like if you have two situations, calling and shoving have the same EV, I will call way tighter than what I will shove, because calling is gonna be a guaranteed risk. So when I call, I need my EV to be way higher than my shove EV. But it really depends. A lot of time, if I am short a stack, I'm willing to call really light. And the second one is kind of obvious. Shoving 12 big blinds, taking way more risk than a big blind. So if a player has sufficient stack, then he doesn't really need to shove, because if he shove like 12 big blinds, he's again just like the last slide says, if you lose, you don't get to see the future hands. 12 big blinds is usually about an M of 5, so means you can see about 30 more hands, and you can pick out a hand in 30 hands and try to double up from there. There's really no point to steal one extra M by risking 12 big blinds when you don't really have to do that. But 8 big blinds are different. 8 big blinds, your M is like 3. Then yes, you should try to shove wider, and doesn't mean you have to shove really wide, but there's like a balance in it. But it makes more sense to shove 8 big blinds than 12 big blinds. 12 big blinds, you have 2 extra M, meaning 18 more hands than 8 big blinds, or 18 more spots than 8 big blinds. So 12 big blinds, if you're comfortable, then you really don't have to shove all the marginal spot. For example, shoving like 7-5 off blindless, even though it's plus EV. Second one is taking unnecessary risk. Just like I said, like you are reducing your feature spot. Folding blindless might create 9 more hands to become a hand, like we said. A lot of time by folding, you are waiting for a better spot to get a hand. But it doesn't mean you have to get really tight. There's a spot that 1, regardless people's calling range, your shove is going to be plus EV. For example, when you have 10 big blinds, blind versus blind, you have any ace or any pair. Regardless people's calling range is still plus EV, then yeah, you can shove. But if people's calling range are wider and your hands are really sensitive and to their calling range, then you should start think about folding. Usually calling are more sensitive and higher risk. The reason is when we shove, people's calling range gonna be range from say like 15% to 40%. So there are only like 25% of differences. But when we call a shove, people's range gonna vary a lot. People might shove 30, say all the situation I just described as blind versus blind, and say we are calling a shove blind versus blind. A guy might be shoving, might be adjusting and shove only 30%, or he can be shoving from 100%. So there's like 70% of differences in general. So when we call a shove, our variance will be bigger because our pre-select range might vary a lot. But when we shove, our folding equities, are the most important thing when we shove. So folding equity are not gonna change that much. So calling are usually more sensitive. So, for example, when I have king 6 off, blind versus blind, 10 big blinds, and small blind is 10 big blind also. When he shove more than 60%, it's plus EV. So I have to be very sure he's shoving 60% every single time for me to call with king 6 off. If I know he's shoving 60% every single time, then I will call. But when he's adjusting to it, then say he's adjusting to 40%, then king 6 off becomes to be very crappy, and it's maybe minus EV to call, and we are taking a guaranteed risk. So if I know the guy just doesn't adjust, like some rack just shoving into blind versus blind blindly, then yeah, I will call. But if I know he's adjusting to me, then I'll start adjusting. So the thing is, king 6 off can be a very high sensitive calling card. But say if I have like pocket 8, unless he's shoving like 15%, pocket 8s are really plus EV to call. So I just don't think he's shoving every single time under 15%. So pocket 8 is lower variance to call. The other thing is, if we lose, how does it change our future play? EV doesn't describe how it will change to future play. EV only describes the present EV. So for example, if we have like 10 big blind versus 10 big blind, we are calling. If we lose, we bust. Okay? If we have like 10 big blind, if we have 14 big blinds and calling a 10 big blind, if we lose, we have 4 big blinds. 4 big blind, we can work something out maybe, but it's better than just busting. If we have 10 big blind, we are calling a 4 big blind. It's much more ideal. If we lose, we have 6 big blind. We still have 4 equities. If we win, we have 14 big blind, which we sit very comfortable. One thing about also in MTTSNGs, if in first scenario when we double out when we have 20 big blinds, unless players are really good at abusing and stealing, doubling up to 20 big blind doesn't accomplish a lot. So taking this kind of risk, like calling 10 big blind versus 10 big blind, is really bad. Not really bad, like really high risk. And as mentioned in first point, the higher the risk, the more certain or the more plus EV the spot has to be. And it goes the same to shoving. A lot of people will shove by effective stack. So, for example, if big blind has 10 big blinds and small blind has 10 big blinds and they're on the bottom with 12 big blinds, they shove by their 10 big blind range because effectively they are only risking 10 big blinds. But the thing is, if you lose 10 big blinds, you only leave yourself with 2 big blinds. And 2 big blinds is you cannot do anything pretty much. So if, unless you double up, and when you double up, you have like 5 big blinds. But essentially shoving 12 big blinds and shoving 10 big blinds are pretty much the same, because I mean, if you have 12 big blinds, you lose 10 big blinds, you leave yourself in huge risk, and you can be bust anything very soon. So essentially, shoving there is pretty much as the same as shoving 12 big blinds, not only just 10 big blinds. But say if I have like 30 big blinds, and if I shove and I lose 10 big blinds, I leave myself 20 big blinds, I have tons of play I can do. So it's one difference. So if I shove 12 big blinds to 2 10 big blind stack, I also want to be very cautious, like, because it's higher risk. I'm not only taking 10 big blind risk, essentially I'm taking 12 big blind risk. So I will actually shove tighter than my 10 big blind range, and way tighter, because shoving 12 big blinds and lose there is gonna be very costly. And I see a lot of players just shove by effective stack and taking unnecessary risk, and they get caught by like shoulder stack, or they run into a hand and they just bust their healthy stack. A lot of time they just don't preserve their stack. I think it's really important to minimize the risk and knowing which risks to take and which risk to pass, and not taking really unnecessary risk, and be aware that calling a guarantee risk. The third one is other smaller points are the thing I'll look when I play. So if the players on my right are aggressive and players on my left are calling very loose and big stack is kind of important, or shoulder stack, meaning that my fall equity decreases, because big stack and small stacks are really willing to call light to gamble. So usually in this kind of situation, I rather to just pass the spot that I don't feel comfortable to shove, and I rather just call off these aggressive players, because by folding, by calling, I get more plus EV spot, because every single time people just gonna shove. So I can, if I know their range well, I can pick up better spot to call. But in the other hand, say if the players are not that aggressive on my left, and on my right, sorry, and on my left people are average stack about like the same stack as me, I have tons of fall equity and I'm not calling really tight, then I'm really looking forward to shove really wide. So my shove gonna adjust slightly to how the whole table is formed. If players are tight and honest, still is lower risk. So this is come to a lot of randoms, or like the players that have very tight stats. A lot of time I will just raise fold the hands that people usually shove. For example, if you have like 12 big blinds blind versus blind against a really tight opponent and I have ace deuce, a lot of people just auto shove because they have 12 big blinds, they have an ace, it's plus EV shove. But a lot of time I'll rather just limp, or I'll just raise fold, because I think it's if you do a calculation, raise fold is actually more plus EV than just auto shove, and it's way lower risk, because shove you are risking 12 big blinds, mean raise you are risking 2 big blinds. So it's not way plus EV, but it's slightly plus EV, but way lower risk. So that's the style I'll take. But the first thing is I have to be very sure the guys that I'm doing this type of stuff into are really tight and honest. If they are really tricky and they reshove a lot, then I really just open shove, or I really just limp and reshove. But if the players are tight, this lower risk play are a place to take. Take a lot of notes. Notes are really important. Even though I use hard to play, I rely a lot on my notes. I want to know that what type of hands our opponent shove into me. Like if I see a guy shove bottom with Jack 5 off into me, then I know he's shoving really wide. Next time calling really wide. If I shove a hand and I see a really marginal call, then I'll take notes as well, and I will be very specific on what type of hand he's calling. So I can know like what kind of hand he's more lean toward to. So when people shove or call, I can see like what type of hand he value more. For example, people might value ace deuce higher than Jack 10 suited. Some people will just call Jack 10 suited, and some people will value ace deuce more than Jack 10 suited. So I want to know like my opponent's what type of value he value hands with. And second, I have to take a lot of notes on who's mean raising with big hands or limping with big hands. Really important, because a lot of people range are really imbalanced. So when they mean raise with 12 big blinds, they only have like premiums, ace queen, jack plus. But a lot of time when they mean and other players, sometimes a lot of time when they mean raise, they just have weak hand, and they will just 2.2x or 2.5x with their strong hands. So there are like many types of players, and it's really hard to know in their tendency if we don't take the notes like this. Third one is whom to abuse. It's really important. It's kind of similar to the second one, and this is really more in like final table. So if we have like big stack in final table, we want to know who is following ICM, who is not. So if we have like 4 players and we have like 20 big blinds and all others have 10 big blinds, ideally we can shove like a lot because they cannot call really line due to ICM. But some people just doesn't care. They will still call with ace deuce, pocket threes, king 8 off, stuff like that. So we want to take note like who's following ICM really strictly and who's not caring about ICM, and we want to properly adjust to that as well. Because in final table, when ICM effect kicks in, the sensitivity goes up by a lot. The EV we described, the sensitivity of the EV, dollar EV, are way more sensitive than chip EV. So, for example, if the guy is calling, we assume he's calling 20%, and by shoving every single time we are making say like $1. But if he's widening up to 25%, we might drop to like -$1, and if he rises up his calling with 30%, our shoving might be -$3. Like our sensitivity of shoving are way higher than chip EV. So when we abuse people or when we shove people, we really want to know who's calling really tight and who's not, and we want to kind of avoid those people who don't follow ICM, and we don't want to abuse them. And the last one, when we enter a table, we want to see how many handeds are they. So if it's like 4-handed, and we want to observe like are they aggressive. If they're really aggressive, I don't get a lot of chance to shove, or the blind will just hit me very often, then I'm gonna shove wider. But if it's like 4-handed and people are really passive, then I really not gonna shove really wide, because it's 4-handed. I can pick up better spot and lower variance spot, and the spot that I think are really low sensitivity. Then I'll pick those kind of spot because people are not keep shoving to me, and I get walks, I get a lot of other situation compared to when people are really aggressive. So it really depends on how many handed and how aggressive they are. If it's like 9-handed, then I know that I can each round I have 9 hands to pick up a hand. If it's 4-handed, I know I have more spot to shove. So there are like pros and cons for different situation. So we want to evaluate those to our shoving range and calling range as well. So now we will try to use the EV calculator, try to find out what type of hands are more sensitive and what type of hands are less sensitive. Right. Here we go. So we're gonna select, say we're shoving blind versus blind. I use blind versus blind as an example because it's easier to describe. We can apply these to calling, the shoving from cutoff, stuff like that. But just using blind versus blind, shoving blind versus blind as an example is easier. So we're gonna assume first range is really tight. It's like really tight. Like he's calling this, and we'll do this as the first range. The second range is wider, so I'm gonna do something like, but not like super wide, like this. And the third range is really wide, so it's calling something like this. So there are 3 range. Okay, and there's a notepad, so we can see how each hands do to this kind of range. Okay, so first range. First, our hand is saying is still soft. Against first range, is still soft. Against first range is 29%. Against second range, 36%. Against third range is 42%. Okay. Second, we're gonna try queen jack off. Against first, against first is 35%. Against second, it's 37%. Against third, 42%. Okay. Third, we're gonna try jack 3 off. Right, 28%. 30%. And 31%. So we can already see jack 3 off is really low sensitivity, but in a bad way. Regardless of what type of range people are calling, it's really bad. And we can see ace deuce off are really more sensitive than queen jack off, because if people are really calling tight, our equity is low, but we have when people are calling tighter, our equity is low. So when people are calling this tight, shoving queen jack off is better than ace deuce off. But when people are calling wide, shoving ace deuce off is pretty much the same as shove queen jack off. Queen jack is really low sensitivity compared to ace deuce off, because it's in a really high equity range throughout people's calling, regardless people's calling. But the thing is, we can see like Jack 3 off unless we have a really good reason to shove. For example, like if we are really short stacked, or if people are calling really tight with tons of full equity, then we can shove. Otherwise, shoving is pretty bad, regardless of people's calling range. Just once call, we just don't have any equity at all. So, like we have like 30% equity. So, we know that from this kind of trial, we can see like what top hands are more sensitive, and then we can do for calling range as well. Calling range are usually more sensitive than shoving range, because people's calling range can be very aligned. It's not gonna be only these three types of scenario. People's shoving range can be this to this to this to this to this, stuff like this. So we want to know that what type of hands are less sensitive to call, and it's really important because again we have to take into account of the areas of our pre-select range. And again, always keep in mind about the risks we are taking, especially the third points that calling are usually more sensitive, and we have to take into account of when we lose, what will happen, and how much it will decrease our future equity. And third is overall, like how I decide my shoving range shift or calling range shift by the whole table. So, and that's it. It might be a little uncertain that just using the concept video, so I will try to do like hand history reviews and live session reviews, or live sessions in the future. Thanks.